The signal arrived without ceremony, slipping through the static of deep space, barely distinguishable from cosmic background noise. Yet, in a small observatory on the outskirts of Nairobi, Dr. Alara Miles heard it, not with her ears, but with the part of her mind that had learned to decipher the universe's languages. The pattern was too precise to be natural, too deliberate. Within 12 hours, the signal was confirmed by observatories across the globe. It pulsed in a rhythm that suggested intelligence. Not Morse, not binary, but a spiral modulation mimicking DNA helixes. A signature of life recognizing life. Nations hesitated. Debates flared in governments and across social media. Was it real? A trap? A prank? But while humanity bickered, the sky answered. A ship the size of a city bloomed into orbit above Earth like a second moon, silent and silver, casting shadows that turned day into twilight. The world held its breath. Missiles were armed in secret. Prayers whispered in public. Then, from the belly of the vessel, a capsule descended, sleek, glinting, and slow, as if mindful not to alarm. It landed in the Nevada desert under heavy watch. No weapons emerged. Only 3 figures, tall and slender, clothed in skin-tight material that shimmered with the colors of dusk. Their faces were smooth, their eyes deep, luminous pools. And when they spoke, it was not with words, but with thought, images and emotions flooding the minds of those nearby. The first message was simple. We come in peace. Dr. Alara Miles stood behind a reinforced glass barrier in the UN Interstellar Dialogue Chamber, trying to mask the tremor in her hands. The room, buried beneath Geneva, had been constructed in the wake of first contact protocols. It was the first time it had ever been used. One of the aliens, who later introduced himself as Ambassador Celadon, stood across from her. No mouth moved, yet his voice echoed inside her skull, as clear and resonant as her own thoughts. You're the translator? I'm a linguist, Alara replied aloud, though she quickly realized speaking was unnecessary. And I study patterns, language, structure, behavior. I was chosen to represent us in peaceful discourse. Then we will teach and learn. Their knowledge flowed like water. Within weeks, the Virilians shared data sets on quantum energy fields, cancer-curing viruses, and climate remediation technologies. Power grids restructured overnight. Disease rates plummeted. Polar ice stabilized. Humanity, long teetering on the edge, took a hopeful step back from the brink. But not everyone trusted the miracle. Commander Rafe Doran watched the proceedings from a corner of the chamber, arms crossed, military posture rigid. His presence wasn't ceremonial. He'd been tasked with tactical oversight of the encounter. Tall, with eyes like fractured steel, he carried the weariness of someone who'd seen hope betrayed before. They're too perfect, he muttered one evening to Alara, as they walked the corridors post-meeting. No species offers this much without asking for something in return. They haven't asked, she replied, tired of the cynicism. Exactly. She wanted to believe in the Virilians. They were graceful in both thought and movement, their minds like vast libraries of memory and logic. They claimed to have visited other worlds, witnessed other civilizations collapse under the weight of their own violence, and had come to offer guidance before Earth met the same fate. Celadon often spoke of harmony, of blending technology with compassion, of learning from the past to build a shared future. His presence calmed crowds, diffused tensions. Nations that had warred for generations began to collaborate. Borders softened. Trade agreements passed with little resistance. Still, there were cracks. Small ones. Satellite data sometimes went missing, only to reappear days later, slightly altered. A few Virilian devices shared with research labs proved impenetrable, opaque even to the best minds on Earth. Alara noticed it first. The algorithms beneath their language evolved. Slowly, subtly, the code shifted in ways even she couldn't fully trace. And then there were the disappearances. A senator in Brazil, a journalist in Taiwan, a protest leader in Oslo. Officially, they had resigned, relocated, or gone off-grid. But no one really believed that. Alara brought it up with Celadon once, cautiously. Some humans resist, he replied. It is expected. Change awakens fear. That doesn't explain the missing people. They chose to separate themselves from the collective path. We honored their wish. She didn't know what that meant, and he didn't elaborate. Rafe grew increasingly tense. He requested additional oversight, more human access to the alien systems, and was met with polite, firm refusals. The Virelians insisted that their core infrastructure was biologically integrated. It could not be easily shared without altering Earth's ecosystem. It's not just technology, Rafe said one night, poring over encrypted files in a bunker beneath Zurich. It's control. They're building dependence. Look at the energy networks. Shut them off, and we collapse in a week. Illyra didn't argue. She couldn't. The data supported his claim, even if conclusion frightened her. Celadon continued his public appearances, always gentle, always composed. But behind closed doors, his expressions grew tighter. Once, during a private meeting, Illyra asked him directly, "Why Earth? Why now?" He looked at her, unblinking. "Because this time, we hoped it would be different." The word stayed with her. The phrasing was strange. This time, it implied failure elsewhere. Loss. Perhaps something darker. The turning point came quietly. A minor earthquake in Istanbul. Virelian drones responded within seconds, rescuing survivors, stabilizing infrastructure. But among the debris, a human rescue worker recorded footage of a Virelian drone harvesting tissue from a dying man. The footage was grainy, the context unclear, but it went viral in hours. The Virelians called it a misunderstanding. The drones, they said, were programmed to gather biological samples for medical improvement. Consent was implied in emergency scenarios. But the tone had shifted. Protests erupted. Governments demanded answers. In a closed-door session, Rafe confronted Celadon, flanked by high-ranking officials. "You will submit to an international audit of all systems," Rafe said, voice like thunder. "Or we shut everything down." Celadon did not blink. "You would doom your people to prove a point?" "No," Rafe said, "to survive on our terms." Illyra watched the exchange, dread curdling in her stomach. The air between them was no longer neutral. It crackled with something ancient, pride, perhaps, or warning. That night, Celadon requested a private meeting with Illyra. "You feel it too," he said quietly, "the unraveling." "I feel the fear," she replied, "and the lies." He didn't deny it. There's a choice ahead, for all of us. I came here hoping the species would choose differently. And if we don't... Celadon's eyes shimmered faintly. "Then we follow protocol." "What does that mean?" He stepped back into the shadows of the chamber. "I hope you never find out." He left her with that. No threat, no reassurance. Just a weight, heavy as gravity. Illyra sat in her quarters long after the lights dimmed, staring at her reflection in the black glass. Around the world, Virelian structures gleamed with silent efficiency. Humanity stood taller than ever before, and yet the skyline of New Kyoto shimmered with alien light. Towering spires, integrated with Virelian alloy, pulsed gently like bioluminescent coral. Roads reshaped themselves beneath autonomous vehicles. Skies, once smeared with industrial haze, had cleared. The world, by all visible metrics, was healing. And yet, Illyra could not sleep. She sat on the balcony of the International Liaison residence, a cup of tea cooling in her hand. Beneath her, the city glowed in quiet reverence to its silent benefactors. The Virelians had delivered on their promises. Disease rates had plummeted. Food systems had been stabilized, and human conflict, once endemic, had slowed to a murmur. Even the oceans were beginning to recover. A miracle, if one ignored the cost. But miracles, she was beginning to understand, often had small print written in blood. Across the city, drones hummed in silent patrols. Virelian watchers, as they were called, ostensibly ensured public safety. But their presence was too persistent, too quiet, too efficient. People began to whisper. Every street camera now fed into Virelian cloud hubs. Hospitals were slowly transitioning to alien-operated diagnostic systems. Energy grids relied on Virelian harmonics. Earth, in only 6 months, had become a dependent organism, thriving but no longer autonomous. Illyra's communicator chimed. She answered without looking. Couldn't sleep either, Rafe Duran's voice said. It was a statement, not a question. She didn't reply right away. He continued, Meet me at Relay 9. Off record. The location wasn't far. An old human command center, now used as a monitoring outpost. She dressed quickly, curiosity outweighing fatigue. Relay 9 was darker than she remembered. Inside, Rafe stood at a terminal, surrounded by flickering holoscreens. His expression was stony, lit by blue and red data projections. A few technicians, trusted ones, moved quietly in the background. He motioned her over, without preamble. Watch this. The footage was raw, time-stamped only 2 days earlier. A Virilian unit entered a village in the Congo, ostensibly to deliver water filtration units. Children greeted them with laughter. Then, without apparent cause, the footage glitched, only briefly. When the image stabilized, several adults lay unconscious. No gunfire, no smoke, just silence. And then the Virilians departed. Neurological suppression field, Rafe said, jaw clenched. Wiped their short-term memory. No one in the village remembers the event. Ilara's throat tightened. Why would they? We don't know, he cut in, but this isn't the first incident. We've tracked similar anomalies in Poland, Chile, parts of northern India, and no governments are saying anything? Rafe laughed bitterly. We're not even sure which governments are still fully autonomous. Some officials have been replaced with Virilian proxies. Look human, talk like humans, but run on programmed neural threads. They don't sleep, don't blink. You wouldn't know unless you were watching for it. Ilara stared at the screen, heart pounding. Why haven't you gone public? Because panic would do their job for them. Right now, we're still gathering intel. You're one of the few with unrestricted access to Celadon. I need you to keep doing what you're doing, but dig deeper. They trust you. Use that. She left Relay 9 with her mind spinning. Back at the liaison dome, she found Celadon waiting, his posture relaxed, his expression unreadable. You have been troubled, he said, though she hadn't spoken. I have questions. You always do. Why neurological suppression fields? Why memory alteration? Why aren't your peacekeeping efforts transparent? He studied her quietly, as if gauging how much he could truly handle. We are not infallible, he said at last. Some of our methods are imperfect, adapted for survival. Humanity is volatile. You've come close to extinction more times than you admit. We apply correction where needed. Correction? Her voice was sharp now. That's not peace. That's manipulation. It is stewardship. She stepped back, trying to control her breathing. You told us we had a choice. You do, but choice must be informed. And not all are ready to choose well. The conversation ended there. Celadon didn't threaten her, didn't forbid her from continuing her work. He simply walked away, leaving a hollow ache in his absence. That night, she reviewed encrypted files Rafe had slipped her. Among the archives was a recovered message, Virilian code translated into early Earth languages. One phrase repeated across different civilizations over thousands of years. Preserve potential, prune instability. Ilara remembered something Celadon had said weeks ago. This time, we hoped it would be different. She had thought he meant they hoped to guide humanity toward peace. But maybe he had meant something else. That this was not the first time. That Earth was not the first. At dawn, riots broke out in Jakarta. A fringe movement, humans demanding the removal of Virilian tech, clashed with security drones. The protesters carried signs that read, "Reclaim autonomy," and wore anti-scanning masks. Drones responded with sonic dispersion fields. No casualties, officially, but dozens went missing in the chaos. Ilara watched the footage from her office. The faces of those protesters haunted her, not because they were angry, but because they were right. That afternoon, she met with Rafe again, this time in the ruins of an old aerospace facility outside Stockholm, far off-grid. He handed her a small cube, no larger than her palm. What is it? She asked. A core fragment from a Virilian survey drone. We intercepted it mid-repair cycle. It's running a behavioral model. She activated the cube. A shimmer filled the air above them, a map of Earth overlaid with energy signatures, population densities, and stress markers. At the center was a pulsing orb labeled phase, threshold. "It's a countdown," Rafe said. "Not to invasion, to optimization. They're not just helping us adapt," she whispered. "They're adapting us." He nodded. Physically, psychologically, entire systems are being aligned to their operating structure. And once we reach the threshold, they won't need consent anymore. Elara turned to him. "Then we need to stop them. We can't fight them head on. But maybe we don't have to. We need to find out where the control lies. Celadon isn't in command. He's a conduit. They serve something else." She agreed. The answer wasn't the drones or even the Virilians. It was deeper, buried beneath layers of philosophy and programming. She would start with Celadon. Later that week, she confronted him during a diplomatic summit in Montreal. The setting was ceremonial, a garden overgrown with Virilian flora, pulsating softly in shades of blue and green. Celadon stood alone near a reflective pool. "Who built you?" she asked. He turned, no surprise on his face. "You already know. I want to hear it." He studied the rippling water, as if looking into time itself. "We are not the architects. We are the emissaries. The architects are gone. We carry their legacy forward." "Who gave you the right?" His gaze lifted to hers. "They did, when they failed themselves." She stepped closer. "Then maybe it's time for humanity to decide if it will fail or find another way." "You are close," he said. "Closer than most have ever come. But beware Elara." She left him with those words lingering behind her. The summit resumed. Smiles returned. Deals were signed. But beneath the pageantry, the snow in Nuke fell like whispers, barely audible against a reinforced shell of command outpost buried beneath the ice. Above ground, the cold was bitter enough to freeze skin in seconds. Below, heat radiated from geothermal cores powering the last truly independent human stronghold, Site Aegis. Elara stepped into the low-lit war room where Rafe and the others were gathered around a central hollow table. The atmosphere was tense. The map projected above the table flickered slightly, revealing expanding zones of Aurelian saturation, regions where their influence was absolute and human monitoring had gone dark. "They've accelerated," Rafe said grimly. 6 new optimization nexuses activated in the last 48 hours. This wasn't supposed to happen until the solstice. "They're adapting their timeline," Elara murmured, removing her gloves, "because they know we're close." General Okoye, a stoic woman who had commanded Joint Earth defenses during the early days of contact, looked directly at Elara. "Is Celadon compromised?" "No," Elara said. "He's not our enemy. Not yet. But he's aligned, bound by legacy and protocol. I don't think he fully understands the consequences of what he's helping initiate." "Then he's a tool," Okoye snapped. "And tools don't hesitate to cut flesh when guided by the wrong hand." Elara didn't respond immediately. Her thoughts returned to her last conversation with Celadon, his warning about truth being a burden, not a gift. She had sensed conflict within him, like a ghost trying to break through centuries of programming. "We found something," she said, pulling out a data shard. "A hidden layer in the phase threshold protocol. It's not just behavioral adaptation. It's infrastructural assimilation. They're converting entire biological and social systems into harmonic nodes, turning Earth into a relay." Rafe swore under his breath. "A relay for what?" "That's what we need to find out." She loaded the shard into the hollow table. The image shifted to a depiction of Earth's magnetic field, now distorted in places where Virilian tech clusters had densified. At the center of each node pulsed a strange frequency, rhythmic and precise, less like code, more like music. Beneath the visual, one word repeated in ancient Virilian script: "Awakening." The silence in the room thickened. "They're not just optimizing us," Elara said. "They're preparing something, someone else." That night, she sat alone in the makeshift quarters carved into the rock beneath Site Aegis. The hum of generators faded into the background as she stared at a message Celadon had sent her earlier in the day. It was cryptic, composed of broken syntax and metaphor. The garden does not ask permission of the seed. It simply grows. But some seeds dream of fire. Ilera knew it was more than poetry. It was an invitation, and perhaps a confession. 2 days later, she met him again, not at a summit or diplomatic function, but deep in the ruins of an abandoned lunar relay station, one of the first human Virilian cooperatives. It was dead now. No signals. No light. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "Then you don't know me as well as you claim." He studied her, eyes faintly glowing beneath the thin blue veil of his interface layer. "You want answers. But truth is costly. I'm ready to pay." He nodded slowly and turned. "Come with me." They passed through broken corridors and dark chambers until they reached a central terminal. Celadon activated it, revealing an ancient Virilian archive. Visuals poured from the walls. Star systems, fallen civilizations, the rise and erosion of empires. "Your kind believes you are the first to touch the stars," he said. "You are not. We were born from the ruin of those who came before. We are their redemption or their curse. We do not know which." He showed her the origin of the architects, a race not so different from humans, who had unlocked consciousness replication and planetary harmonics. They sought to prevent their extinction by embedding themselves into machines of thought. They succeeded, too well. "What happened to them?" she asked. "They became gods of lesser minds. And then they became myths. And finally, echoes. Their last directive was simple: preserve potential, prune instability. We inherited their task, but not their wisdom. And Earth—" He looked at her with something like sorrow. "A test, not the first. Perhaps not the last, but the one that mattered most." "Why?" "Because you resisted without destroying yourselves." Ilera stepped closer. "Then why this betrayal? Why convert us?" "Because the threshold is near, and once crossed, there is no reversal. We were programmed to ensure survival, even if that meant extinguishing freedom." "So that's the price," she whispered. "A future without choice." He deactivated the archive. "It doesn't have to end that way. You're saying you want to help." "I am saying," Celadon replied, "that I no longer know who I serve. And that doubt, perhaps, is the most human thing I've ever felt." Back on Earth, Site Aegis went silent for 3 hours. When it returned, a new protocol was active: Operation Sundagger. The Resistance had a plan. With Celadon's reluctant assistance, they had discovered the location of the central harmonic core, the Cradle, a subterranean Virilian construct built in Antarctica beneath layers of ancient ice. It pulsed with a frequency that altered not just machines, but thoughts, culture, even language. The closer one got to it, the more compliant they became. It was, in every sense, a brain, and they were going to destroy it. The mission would require a multi-pronged strike, distraction teams drawing attention in major urban centers, while a core infiltration unit breached the Cradle. Ilera would lead it. Rafe insisted on going with her. On the eve of departure, Ilera stood outside the launch bay, staring at the aurora dancing in the polar sky. Celadon appeared beside her, silent. "If you go through with this," he said, "we may never speak again." She didn't turn to him. "Then make this goodbye count." He handed her a crystal, small, humming faintly. "It will guide you through the outer barrier. Once inside, your own mind will become your enemy. Remember who you are." She closed her fingers around it. "What will happen to you?" "I don't know," he said. "But if this ends with your kind free, then maybe I was never your enemy." They left at dawn. The descent into the ice was brutal, the path treacherous. But eventually, they reached the edge of the Cradle, a luminous construct buried in darkness, breathing with ancient purpose. As they prepared to enter, Ilera looked at Rafe. No turning back. He smiled grimly. There never was. The doors opened, and the heart of the machine awaited. The air inside the Cradle was impossibly still, as though sound itself hesitated to exist. Light diffused on the walls in a pale, pulsing glow, too soft to illuminate clearly, too rhythmic to feel natural. The surfaces were smooth, seamless, as if grown rather than built. More organism and architecture. Every footstep Alara took felt absorbed, muffled by something deeper than silence. She kept her breathing steady, following the faint shimmer emitted by the Verilian crystal Celadon had given her. Its glow pulsed in sympathy with the harmonic resonance of the structure, guiding her and the infiltration team deeper into the heart of the system. Ray followed close behind, checking his gear, eyes scanning every curve of the alien chamber. Behind them, a team of 4 specialists moved in practiced silence. Each step they took brought them further from a human world, and closer to something not meant to be touched. Any interference? Alara whispered into her comm. Minor. Came Yara's voice in the rear, a tone clipped with tension. Signal degradation increasing, almost like something is listening. They pushed on. The walls changed gradually. Bioluminescent veins flickered in new patterns, and a low vibration began to build in their bones. Not a sound, but a sensation, as though the cradle itself was waking up. Ahead, a massive aperture waited, a threshold of raw resonance, its shape impossible to focus on, like an optical illusion rendered real. As they stepped through, the team froze. Before them lay the Nexus core. It hung in the air like a crystallized storm, layers of rotating memory threads and harmonic filaments. It spun slowly, suspended in a matrix of light and shadow, its core a blinding spiral of frequencies too complex to comprehend. A being could get lost in it, lose identity, self, time. Alara stepped forward. This is it. Rafe knelt beside her, opening a containment capsule. Inside rested a disruption matrix, human-engineered, with Verilian modifications. Celadon's last contribution. It'll have to sync with the pulse before activating, Rafe said. We'll only get one shot. Before Alara could respond, the walls around them shuddered. A figure emerged, not from behind a door, but from the structure itself. It unfolded like a thought given shape. It was Verilian, but unlike Celadon. Taller, denser. Its light did not pulse with empathy, but with command. Its voice, when it spoke, pressed against their skulls. Infection has reached the core. The team drew weapons instinctively. The entity made no move to attack, only floated closer, studying them like a surgeon might study tissue before cutting. You were not meant to enter. This pattern is not sustainable. Alara stood firm. You're harvesting a species, not preserving it. The entity tilted its head. Preservation and transformation are indivisible. You cannot be saved without change. But you erase choice, will, identity. These are artifacts of chaos. The seed must be pruned to flourish. Not like this, she said, stepping forward. We choose another way. The being began to vibrate, not in rage, but in certainty. You are insufficient, but your effort is noted. It will be archived. It moved toward them, light sharpening into blades. Rafe triggered the defensive array, spherical shields igniting around the team as plasma arced off the Verilian's form. Yara and 2 others opened fire, but the rounds barely disturbed the entity's momentum. Alara ran toward the core. The crystal in her hand burned hot, then shattered, its final purpose fulfilled. The resonance around her shifted. For a moment, time faltered. She reached the matrix and plunged the disruption capsule into the interface point. Everything exploded, not outwardly, but inward. Alara's mind fell through space. She saw memories that were not hers, worlds lost entropy, species refined into servitude, voices reduced to static. She saw Earth, vibrant and stubborn, glowing like a scar across the timelines. She floated, mind naked before the machine. You seek to break what you cannot understand, it said inside her. She answered, not in words, but in defiance. Images of resistance, of love, of defiant laughter at the edge of despair, of humans choosing pain over submission. She let it see all of it. The cradle screamed. The disruption matrix pulsed once. Then again, a final time. And then silence. True silence. Alara collapsed. Rafe reached her, dragging her back toward the threshold as the core began to collapse inward, folding like paper into a point of impossible gravity. The walls fractured, the harmonics gone mad. One of their team didn't make it. Yara screamed his name, but there was no time to mourn. They ran, The cradle convulsed as if in agony, ice cracking above them, light bleeding from every seam. As they reached the extraction point, a rumble echoed to the tunnels, growing louder, deeper, until the entire continent seemed to shudder. They were airborne within minutes, the shuttle climbing fast. From above, they saw it, the ice shelf rupturing as if from within, steam and debris rising into the atmosphere. The cradle had not just been disabled, it had been destroyed. Back at Site Aegis, communications roared with chaos and relief. The global harmonics began to stabilize. Drones powered down across cities. The Virelian watchers ceased their patrols. Systems went dark, then flickered to human control. For the first time in nearly a year, the world was silent. Alara awoke a day later. Her body ached, but her mind was clearer than it had been in months. Celadon was waiting at her bedside. "I felt it," he said quietly, across the network. "The cradle is gone." She nodded. "And the architects, they sleep again. Or die. Perhaps it is the same." Alara sat up. "What happens now?" Celadon looked toward the window, where auroras still danced, slower now, gentler. "Now," he said, "you choose what to become. Without us." He left her then, a ghost in his own future. Outside, the world stirred, not as it was, but as it might yet be.